Yemen tonight. Does this mean that it is the new front in the war on terror? Log on to AC360.com for more on the secret U.S. military operations targeting al-Qaeda in an increasingly unstable region, including a blog from Peter Bergen. And right here when we come back, 3 passengers from Flight 253, a husband and wife, who are raising a provocative question tonight. Did the suspect possibly have help getting onto this flight? In fact, did this man even have a passport? That's ahead. Well, joining us now, passengers Kurt and Lori Haskell, who told authorities about a remarkable scene they witnessed at the gate in Amsterdam. Also with us tonight is Rochelle Keatman, who was on board that flight as well with her family, including her newly adopted brother and sister from Ethiopia. Good to have all of you with us. Kurt, I want to start with you because you say you witnessed the suspect at the airport and you saw something that really made you sit up and take notice. To walk us through what you saw in Amsterdam.
Sure. Lori and I were sitting near the boarding gate. Sitting on the floor, there weren't any seats to sit in. And I saw 2 men, and they caught my eye because they seemed to be an odd pair. One was what I would describe as a poor-looking black teenager around 16 or 17, and the other man, a age 50-ish, wealthy-looking Indian man, and I was just wondering why they were together. Kind of strange. And I watched them approach what I would call the ticket agent, the final person that checks your boarding pass before you get on the plane. And I could hear the entire conversation. The only person that spoke was the Indian man, and what he said was, this man needs to board the plane, but he doesn't have a passport. And the ticket agent responded, well, if he doesn't have a passport, he can't get on the plane. To which the Indian man responded back, he's from Sudan. We do this all the time. And the ticket agent said, well, then you'll have to go and talk to my manager. And she directed them down a hallway. And that was the last time that I saw the Indian man. And the black man I didn't see again until he tried to blow up our plane a few hours later.
And when did you put 2 and 2 together and realize that this in fact appeared to be the same man you saw who may not have had a passport?
I got a good look at him on the plane when we landed and the FBI was arresting him, and that's when I put it all together. I recognized him as the same man that I had seen before we boarded.
And I know everyone has been questioned who was on that flight. Lori, it's tough to understand, I think, especially for a lot of people watching this, and I'm sure for you who were sitting there, how anybody could be allowed on board an international flight without a passport. When you and your husband talked to authorities, when you told them what you saw, what was the reaction?
They seemed really interested in what we had to say. They talked to every family. A lot of the families they were talking to them for about 5 minutes or so. They talked to Kurt and I for probably about 15 minutes, maybe a little bit more. At one point, they called over another FBI agent to, I guess, witness what the other one was talking to us about. So I think that they were really interested in what we had to say about what we saw in the Amsterdam airport. However, the FBI and no other authorities have contacted us since then.
And does that seem odd to you, or do you figure that's just part of the investigation?
You know, I don't know. It does seem a little bit odd. If my husband is the only one that noticed this happening, I would think that we would have been contacted for further questioning, especially now with all of the media that's been contacting us.
It'll be interesting to see if they do contact you in the next few days, and we hope you'll let us know as well. In terms of security, though, Rochelle, I know you have said, and Kurt and Lori talked a little bit about this, but Rochelle, you've said that you thought the security was actually a little bit lax in Amsterdam. How so?
Oh, absolutely. When we had to go through security, we didn't even have to take our shoes off. Also, my mom had a water bottle, forgot about it in her bag, and it scanned right through. So we brought it in and onto the plane. So,
were you concerned about that at all at the time, or was it more in hindsight you thought, well, wait a minute, what else could have gotten on the plane?
You know, I compared it to the airports here, and that wouldn't be allowed, but at the same time, you're just so eager to get home, you don't think about that right then.
And especially for you traveling with your newly adopted siblings, obviously an exciting time for you and your family, but for these kids, I can only imagine how scary that must have been. You were at the rear of the plane, so you didn't actually see all this happening, but there's plenty of commotion. How did the kids handle it?
Well, you know, our goal on the entire flight when this was occurring was to just not let these 2 children know what was going on. We agreed that we would just pretend that it was a big game, because these kids have been through so much in their lives that this just wasn't, they didn't need to know what was going on, so we turned it into, they don't speak English, and we turned it into more of a game and said, isn't this exciting? And we sang songs, and my dad and I and my mom, we all prayed together for safety, and that, you know, if we weren't going to make it, that these children would never know what was really going on.
And we should point out, we're looking at some pictures of them there on the flight. That was actually the flight that got you to Amsterdam, not the flight from Amsterdam to Detroit. When all of this went down, I know that this man with the suspect was tackled pretty quickly by other passengers. Kurt and Lori, you were actually not too far, only a number of rows behind all of them. Was there anything else that you noticed or that stuck out about that incident, Kurt, as this man is being tackled?
I think I'll let Lori answer that. When this was going on, I was more focused on the fire, and she witnessed more of the altercation between the terrorist and the passengers.
And Lori, he seemed to be subdued pretty quickly.
Yeah, everything happened, it seemed like, in less than a minute. We saw smoke. We then saw flames going up the side of the plane near the seat where he was sitting. At that point, two people, one from behind him and one from the side of him, tackled him to the ground, and that's pretty much the last time we saw him. We were pretty freaked out by the fire, so we weren't paying attention to that. We were paying attention to the fire going up the side of the plane.
Understandable, obviously. And we just saw that the picture there. There's a still photo of the suspect on the plane. But I know, Rochelle, you believe there may actually be video of the incident?
Yeah, that was very strange. There was a man that when we first took off, I noticed about 10 seats ahead of us to the left-hand side. He had a camcorder, and I didn't think much of it. I thought maybe this was his first flight and was just excited. And then when the actual incident occurred, I looked up, and he was the only one standing and filming the entire thing.
Interesting. There obviously still so much more to come out about this. We really appreciate you joining us, Kurt and Lori Haskell, Rochelle Keatman, with your insight tonight. Good to have all of you with us. Thanks. Later, more on what Gene was talking about, whether technology may be the answer to better safety. We'll take a look at those scanners that can look at every inch of you and look at whether or not you need to still have a problem with that.
The fact is that this is a protected patsy. In other words, this is a puppet. This is somebody who's an asset controlled by U.S. intelligence. This is a way to stage a provocation. We've had 4 days of wall-to-wall hysteria worldwide about this. Let's just look at a couple of facts. His father, a rich Nigerian banker, went to the U.S. Embassy in Nigeria on the 19th of November and said, my son is in Yemen. He's at a terrorist training camp. Do something about this. Nevertheless, the son is allowed to buy a ticket in Ghana, paying cash, $2,800, for a one-way ticket. He can get on the plane in Nigeria after entering Nigeria illegally, and when he gets to Amsterdam, he's apparently, I think, a mental deficient who can't make it from one gate to another. So according to an eyewitness account, there's a well-dressed Indian man who brings him to the gate for the U.S. flight and says, my client here, or my friend here, doesn't have a passport. Get him on. He's Sudanese, and we do this all the time.
So you're saying there's no way this man should have been able to get on board the plane if he was, in fact, all the things that they're saying.
Yes, a trial date has been set, but it was actually more interesting to hear from a couple of the passengers who showed up here at court today, who have a very interesting theory about what really happened.
The U.S. government escorted him through security without a passport, and we believe gave him an intentionally defective bomb.
It's a startling allegation from two local attorneys who were on board the 2009 Christmas Day flight to Detroit when Umar Farouk Abdul Muttalib tried to blow up a bomb hidden in his underwear. Kurt and Lori Haskell think the U.S. government was behind the whole thing.
It was intentional that it went this far to further the war on terror, to get body scanners in the airports, to increase the TSA's budget, to renew the Patriot Act, and whatever other reasons you want to list.
The Haskells say in Amsterdam, before boarding the flight to Detroit, they witnessed Abdul Muttalib arguing with a ticket agent at the gate because he didn't have a passport, when a man in a tan suit with an American accent intervened.
The ticket agent did not want to allow Muttalib on the flight, and this man was very insistent of it. And then she referred them to a manager down the hallway.
They next saw Abdul Muttalib on board the plane when they saw fire and people screaming. Abdul Muttalib has insisted on representing himself in this case.